On the basis of assessment. I want to kick us off by starting by talking a little bit about the services that we provide at the CTE. So we are all about, supporting faculty innovation, getting the strongest, tried and true pedagogical practices in the classrooms, positively benefiting faculty and students. We do that in a number of ways. We do teaching observations. We also offer those for grad students. So if you want a grad student to come in and observe you teaching, you can request that at our email address, cte@smu.edu. We also have workshops like today. We do symposia, other events. We have teaching Thursdays, and we offer personalized course development services as well. So I want to start with introductions. I'll go first. My name is Heather Deneen. I'm in the English department. I'm a 6-year PhD candidate. So I'm finishing up my dissertation right now. And what I'm hoping to get out of this workshop is just more insight into what's going on in your questions that you have about pedagogy, particularly about assessment, and figuring out ways that I can be more helpful in teaching our students. So I think we'll start with the folks who are here in person. If you could introduce yourselves and your name, your department, and what you're hoping to get out of the workshop today, that would be phenomenal. Thank you.
My name is Sonia.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paula. I'm from operations at my science department, and that's why this one. And I want to pursue my path after graduation, so I'm going to be a professor, both in the schools and so I want to learn how to teach how to design courses,
Great. Yeah, this will definitely be helpful, even just being able to talk about the difference between formative and summative assessments, right? And sort of like best practices for both. That's going to be helpful in your job materials, interviews, and stuff like that, as well as in the classroom. And you, personally, don't know.
My name is Roseanne. I'm in the English department. I'm in the 4th year of the PhD program, and I'm hoping to find new ways to do some meaningful formative assessments rather than just in questions.
Yeah.
Or write down 2 things you take away from this, like something that is useful for students. And also probably some fresh ways to do summative assessments. So
Yeah, I would think so. Some other ideas besides just like the standard research paper, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, folks online.
Hi, I'm Allie Barber. I am also in the English department.
You can try to come off mute, or you can use the chat function, whatever's best for you.
Oh, can you hear me? Ooh, I guess not. Hello?
Allie said that she's off mute, but
yeah, we can't hear you, Allie. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me see here. Say
Something, Allie, just
right now.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you a little bit. Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Allie. I am also in the English department. I'm a 5th year PhD candidate.
English department, 5th year student.
Yes. And I'm basically also, like Roseanne was saying, looking for ways to approach the summative assessments beyond simply the research paper or a longer paper.
Allie agrees with you, Roseanne.
Bringing together different things.
Yes,
I do.
And Sumaya says, I'm a 4th year in the clinical psychology PhD program. I hope to get some guidance on effective assessment techniques and learn to align assessments with learning goals and diverse learning styles. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to start by just talking about what's the difference between formative and summative assessments. So formative assessments are low stakes opportunities. You can think of them as like the more minor assignments that you're doing. These are opportunities for you to check in on your students' ongoing progress. And to understand if you need to sort of pivot and change the way you're approaching what you're teaching, These are basically like check-ins with your students, right? So these can include things like quizzes, free rides, exit tickets, in-class activities worth a small number of points, right? They're not going to torpedo anybody's grade. They're just an opportunity to check in. And then summative assessments, these are going to come at the end of like a unit of learning or the end of the term, right? So things like research papers, exams, presentations, projects, things like that. And the goal of a summative assessment is more so to really assess what your students have understood over this chunk of learning, right? So these are, like I said, going to happen at the end of a unit, and they give you sort of the final feel for student skills and knowledge. Any questions about these? Okay, great. So what is the point of formative assessments? I kind of talked about this already, but I think this definition from Carnegie Mellon is really useful. So the goal of formative assessment is to monitor student learning, to provide ongoing feedback that can be used by instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. More specifically, formative assessments help students identify their strengths and weaknesses and target areas that need growth. But they also, very importantly, they help faculty recognize or grad students recognize where students are struggling and address those problems immediately. They help you be a more flexible instructor, right? So like Samaya, when you're talking about sort of diverse learning styles, you might see on your formative assessments that some students, however you're teaching, is not quite working for them, right? So this gives you a chance to adjust. Okay, so some examples of formative assessments. You can do exit tickets. So these can help you determine where students need additional support to learn. They can be very, very simple. You can have students briefly summarize something from the lesson for the day, answer a question, complete a poll, something like that. But you want to get a gist of just like how much have they actually taken in from the lesson today, right? In-class activities, I use these a lot. So things like free writing, mind or concept maps, quizzes, polling. These give your students a chance to actually, maybe not quizzes so much, but like practicing skills in the classroom, right? So let's say, like for me with English, if I'm teaching close reading, I want to have students work together, maybe on their own or in small groups to close read a passage, give them a couple points, right? And then even while I'm in class with them, I'll kind of hear what they've learned. And if I realize they're not quite doing everything they need to be doing, then actually in that classroom the same day or the next day, right? I can sort of readdress. Well, this is actually if I want you to be close reading, but this like works, I think, across a range of disciplines, right? You still have to kind of tweak. Drafting and workshops. So if you've got, you know, a paper due, a major sort of written assignment, or like a project, right? You can have students actually start completing that work in class with you. You can have them draft portions, like say if I'm having students write a paper in composition, I might have them draft their introductory paragraph in class, so I can get a chance to see what's going on under the hood in terms of their thinking about their assignment. But yeah, just giving students a chance to come up with initial drafts for papers or projects. Again, just worth a small number of points. This just helps you check in, like, are they actually conceiving of the assignment the way that I want them to be, right? And if not, well, how can I fix that? And then research or project proposals. So last semester I had students turn in a zine for their like final creative project, and I had them propose the zine and include an image, because zines are, you know, you're going to use writing as well as imagery, just to get them started on the project before the last minute, because that's very helpful for students, right? But also to see like, well, are they actually understanding what I'm asking them to do? Again, if not, then we can pivot, we can address it again. Some other formative assessments, reflections or self-assessments. You can have students, I don't know, I've done like having them evaluate a paper by a rubric in class, or write a reflection on a recent assignment or on the lesson for the day. You can have them do three-way summaries. This is really fun, I think. The students struggle a little bit, but I think they're very proud of themselves when they're done with it, and it's great to see. So you have a student summarize a concept or your lecture first in 100 words, then in 50 words, then in 20 words. I usually time it. So you can really see like what is the sort of kernel of like learning that they're getting out of the day, right? And is it the right one? Word clouds are very fun. You can use Poll Everywhere for free if you have fewer than 20 students. You can have like just ask a question. I don't know, what was your key sort of in one word takeaway from this section of the reading? And students will have to put in a word that is their answer. And the more people who select the word, the bigger the cloud gets. So you get this really nice, like, visual of what students are taking away from things. You can also do games. Trivia, I think, is really fun. And creative extension mini projects. So this is where you're asking students to get creative. You can have them draw, write creatively, put on a little skit, like get up and move around and do something creative to reflect like what they've taken away from the lesson or the reading or whatever it is that you're working on at that moment. So I wanted to discuss briefly with you all, what kinds of formative assessments have you either used as an instructor in the past or have you experienced as a student? What worked well for you and what are you interested in trying? So maybe we can start with the first one. What kinds of formative assessments have you used as an instructor or experienced as a student that worked well? Games, yeah.
We have this first class meeting, and what more do we
Mhm. Yes. So you use that as an instructor with your students? Yeah, great. Yeah. And how do they respond?
Oh, they were,
Yes. I think it almost feels a little competitive. It gives them like a little edge. Yeah, makes it more fun for sure. Anyone else?
Online, we had concept mapping.
Yes, concept mapping. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I had them create a concept map on any
Give Samaya a
topic of
second.
their. Oh,
Anybody
sorry.
else? Yeah, Roseanne.
self-assessments and reflections after like bigger projects. So it helps to give. I think the students like talking about their experience in writing, but also I think it helps them for their next projects because they start to learn who they are as a scholar.
Yeah. What kind of questions do you ask them to reflect on?
Usually it's sort of what did I do well? What would I like to do better next time? What was something that surprised you about?
Yeah, that's a great one. Absolutely. How about you, Val?
Yeah, we also had a 3-way summarize, but wasn't 3-way, it was 1-way, I believe. Because one that didn't work or something. You just need to summarize it was like 2 or 3, I think, lectures per year.
No, okay.
Semester. And that was good, like actually helped to understand it, but it wasn't like something that continued to that's like a lot or something.
Yeah.
That was fun and good, but that is what it is.
Yeah, I think that works really well too for readings. If you have students summarize the reading in 100, I mean, they'll kind of hate you for it, but again, they will be proud of themselves at the end, and I do think it's really worth doing. But especially like a trickier reading, when you want to make sure that the students actually have kind of understood it, right? And making them even work together in small groups, that can be really helpful too if something is a little trickier. But yeah, making them just continue to distill until they get the point, I think is really useful.
Well, actually, it was like we had like Python class, and it was like coding stuff, and we tried to summarize the coding without actually coding.
Oh, that's great.
Writing our own
Yeah.
codes.
Yes.
So that's why I just remember the logic of the code.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, Ali says, I'm a big fan of free writing in class and using that as a starting place for discussions or an activity where I set a timer and have each of them talk about what they wrote about for 1 minute. Yeah, those are great.
Samaya also thinks so much.
Oh, great. Let me see. Thank you, Samaya. I had students create a concept map on a PowerPoint slide on a course topic of their choice from the current chapter we're on. These are excellent. So,
I've done before,
yeah.
there are some templates for Jeopardy, for
Mm,
PowerPoint Jeopardy.
Yeah.
That, like, every time that I do Jeopardy in class. students
Yes.
Because it is just playing for the whole class and I mean, the PowerPoint's templates that you can find online have everything, you just have to change the information.
Yes, that's a great one.
It's actually, is the concept map just sort of a three-form outline?
The way I've done it in the past is to have students connect themes between texts over the term. Particularly because like I have them do at the end of the term, I have them like write a little bit about a text that they can substitute for one of my texts on the syllabus. So I want them to be able to connect texts together, but also to like our broader course themes. Sure you could use them in, yeah, I think they are helpful for brainstorming like summative assessments or projects. But for me, they're really helpful just to like have students be talking to each other and also create a visual that sort of like makes the term make sense to them in a really explicit way. Yeah.
course, they need to learn, they are not made, they just need to learn how to do it live. But for me, I think it's just important that they start doing it, or when they listen to it, they don't think it's really something. So, we have this piece that have to learn, easy work like this morning. But I also put the really good reporting with visuals of the Scottish document, it was like 4 minutes. And they gave them papers, and they had to draw something that they imagined doing.
That's great,
Yeah, and everybody did like different things, and they also talked about it. And everybody was like so surprised, and I said that, yes, we have different experiences, the same music. There's a difference over there, it's amazing. So it reminds them why we actually use it. Yes. So not just the practicality, but why, yes.
Am I repeating that for them? It's kind of a summary.
Yes, so we were talking about, I'm so sorry, can you remind me of your name?
Million.
Camilla. Was talking about with her students, having them listen to classical music. And then drawing what they're like sort of imagining or seeing while they're listening, right?
I guess the creative expression.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, yeah, that makes sense too. Yeah, having them write words as well. So then students get to see that everybody is sort of having a slightly different experience with the music, right? That it's affecting them creatively in different ways. And there's nothing boring about that, right? Yes, that's excellent. Yeah, I don't know. Is there something that you're interested in trying in the future? Maybe something that you're not sure how it would fit into your course in terms of a formative assessment?
Tell me, so. I struggle with the word, haven't yet understood how the word cloud.
Yeah.
To anything beyond, just looks fun, and here's a bunch of words. Can you help me understand that?
For me, I find it useful really, the way that I use it most of the time is when I have students who are really reluctant to speak. Because when they see that there's some consensus in the room, that seems to make them more comfortable talking.
So it's like a means to a broader discussion.
Right. That's mainly how I use it. But I think there's plenty of ways. Adi, do you have any other ways that you use word clouds?
No, I think just to see if everybody's getting the key concept, right? Because for the word clouds, particularly she was a tool like pull everywhere, which is available for SAP, right? You can have short sentences that the students can kind of input, and then the system will figure out kind of what is being spoken about the most. So you can give your opinion and just see like what is coming out, like, you know, the most out of everybody's input, and see if they're getting the core information. So it's a weird way to summarize something for the whole class's input.
I think it could be interesting if you had students like pose the word cloud, like after a presentation or talking about a paper or something like that. To see like the way that they're explaining their thought process, is it making sense to everybody else in the room? But it doesn't, I think it feels like more fun and less confrontational sometimes than other ways of getting that feedback in. Yeah.
Like maybe these are one to try games,
Mhm.
because I remember once I was in high school, like 10 years ago, there was like kind of algebra class, and that was like really simple. The instructor asks some questions, and if you answered it correctly, you'll give like candy or something. You have a point, and like the highest point would be like. And I'm a competitive person. I would die for those candies. And that's still like some experience that I remember like after 10 years. So I would definitely want to try such things like games, like maybe different versions. But
Mhm.
I really like the games motivation for sure.
Yeah, I feel like Jeopardy would be perfect,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah. Yeah, I've done trivia where I've done like short answer, multiple choice, stuff like that, but I feel like Jeopardy that would really speak to those business students.
And there's a lot of tools, there's electronic tools, even like with Go Everywhere, they have some gaming things that you can do, but there's a tool called Kahoot that is a good one too. You can pre-program on the app some games and then send to the students that are doing their devices, which is kind of fun. But then you see the scoreboard, you know, you see them just, you know, you want to answer things quickly to get more points, so it's fun. It can be fun.
Okay, so
Ruin friendships.
yes.
Ruin friendships.
So we're gonna move on to summative assessments. So the goal of summative assessments is to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing against some standard or benchmark, right? I use rubrics. Summative assessments are often they're high stakes, right? That this is where, I don't know, maybe they're 15-20% of your grade, et cetera. Which means that they have a high point value. So that's quite different from formative. Assessment of learning provides data to confirm course outcomes and students the opportunity to demonstrate proficiency in learning objectives. Assessment of learning provides student ownership of learning by utilizing evidence-based learning strategies, promoting self-regulation, and providing reflective learning. So I feel like the summative assessment, the training wheels are off, right? Now it's sort of up to them to show you that they've learned and they've gained the skills that they needed to have. Okay, so some example summative assessments, exams, welcome to those, presentations, papers, or projects. But there are other summative assessments that you can use. For instance, podcasts. I've used podcasts as like my first summative assessment in a number of courses now. I think it can be really useful for getting students to show that they have some of the skills that you're looking for without having to like kind of hard to talk around this. So like for me, instead of doing a paper for my first summative assessment, I do a podcast because I want students to practice literary analysis. That's a super important learning outcome in my class, right? But sometimes to do the literary analysis and do the writing, the academic writing, it's just too much. It's overwhelming, right? So for me, podcasting gives them an opportunity to practice that literary analysis, but not worry about the writing so much. But they also get to practice in conversation with others. So they're giving their idea to others with evidence. They're responding to others' ideas. That's really useful. And also I find that students tend to make friends with their groups. So early in the term, they're creating a little support circle for themselves with the podcasting. That can be really helpful throughout the term. But I think podcasts can be useful for all kinds of things. So a great summative assessment to consider, especially I would say early in the term. Some students too, they love it. They get all carried away. They make little commercials. They do like intro and outro music, which I never require. Like they're kind of nervous about it. And then they get really excited. We also, in Fondren, we have a podcast studio. So they can book time in there to record. Performances. I had a history professor who required us to do a skit, which I was a theater kid, so I was all about. But I think there's a lot of ways that you can have students do performances, especially in English, like I guess recitation, that's like sort of what we do, or Dan does, I guess, in his classes. But I could think of like, I don't know, if you're teaching a marketing class, right? Why not have students actually like write and act out a commercial for a product, right? Something like that. You can do video blogs, video blogs, e-portfolios. This is where students like save the work they've done over the term so that they create this online portfolio that reflects kind of the growth in their skills over the term that they would then submit. Or zines. This one I've also done, as I talked about. I write some pretty tough exams, so I like to have a creative project at the end of my semester to kind of like smooth things out for them. And I find that having them produce a physical object, it's just something that they don't get the chance to do very often. I mean, they don't even turn in papers on hard copy very often anymore. It's something that they enjoy. It's something that they can save, or if they have a professor like me, I'll save it forever on my bookshelf because I love my classes and it makes me so happy to flip through their little scenes, a year later. Okay, so I'd like to have us just like have a bit of a discussion. I was going to have people get in groups, but there aren't that many of us in person or online. So if we can talk about, well, I've got a few questions here. Like thinking about a class that you have taught or that you can see yourself teaching in the future. Is there a summative assessment that you kind of have in mind? Maybe something you haven't tried before, you're not sure how it would work. Something that we can kind of brainstorm, like how could we make this work for your course? Why would you want this form of assessment? How could you sort of frame the expectations for this assessment for your students? And how does this particular assessment work with the sort of crucial competencies that you're wanting students to gain from your course? So I know that's sort of a lot, so maybe we can take a couple of minutes. You might also think about how you can kind of redesign a summative assessment that you've done before. So I don't know, like what are you doing for your summative assessments? Is it like a performance? Is there an exam component? What do you typically do? That's cool. I wonder if something like a podcast or a blog could work with theory for you, for having students discuss and define and like apply things.
Or it could be a vlog of them in the
Mhm.
process of learning, like them filming themselves. You know, learning the piece or the song that
Yeah.
they like, or explaining why they picked that song or something like that.
They could do
In different sections, learning how to do different sections, they record themselves and put together, like at the end, they have to
Yeah.
submit a video of the process of them learning the song, and then everybody watches it in class at the end.
they could do like what I play in a day, right? Instead of
Yeah.
like what I eat in a day or what I wear
Yeah.
like outfit of the day.
Yeah, yeah,
And
Yeah, that would be cool.
can I talk a little bit about that topic?
Yes.
I'm going to.
I love it
so
when you
why
talk.
did I even ask? So something that I think is really helpful, you guys said this earlier, I used to teach high school, I taught a couple of different grades. And projects can be really useful or really useless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really depends, and I learned this by making useless projects. I realized that they didn't learn. They really didn't, what did they get out of it? And so I had to figure out how to write my rubric before I even really was able to figure out what the project was. So like understanding what the learning outcome for each individual assessment was really important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of what I wanted to sort of narrow it down on is how would you frame your expectations for the assessment to students? I think students love a rubric.
Yes.
Because they feel totally at sea without one.
Yes. And for me personally, like, I do every assignment, every formative or summative assessment that I assign students, I have to do it myself to like see what it's actually gonna be like in practice. And that's usually when I'm creating my rubric as well, right? Or like I can adjust my rubric based on, well, maybe actually the things I thought I wanted my students to do, that's not actually gonna work. Yeah, I love rubrics. You all use rubrics?
Where you break it down and sort of into grid and sort of, you have to meet these requirements for this many points.
So for papers, I'll have like introduction, it needs to do X, Y, and Z. And then like if someone does it pretty much exactly the way I want, that's full points for a slight reduction in points. And I kind of describe like, so if you want 20 points out of this 20-point category, then this section of your paper needs to look like this. If it kind of looks like this, but we've got some issues, maybe there's like a lot of passive voice or there's too many spelling errors or something like that, right? Then you're losing some points. So students can actually like visualize how each part of a paper or a project or presentation, right? Like how it's measuring up to your expectations, but also exactly what those expectations are.
clearly outlining the expectations of, and how you're going to be grading, what you're looking for in any assignment. That's a good grade.
And that's how I also like to, that's why I also like to do, I like to do the assignment myself. I usually just give myself like a couple of hours because I assume that it should take me a lot less time than it'll take students. But then I provide that to them for, as an example, with the like graded rubric. So like my last example paper for my students was like a B+ because I kind of veered for my thesis at the end. So I would show them that with the rubric so they could see, oh, okay, the intro looks good, that's what I should model, but I gotta make sure my thesis actually like matches the end argument of my paper. Otherwise it's gonna cost me X points or whatever.
There's an example with the laptop.
Oh, great. Okay. So Maya says, I'll be teaching health psychology in the spring and past professors of this class have done a behavioral change project. Students select a personal health behavior they would like to modify. I plan to continue this, but add on a reflective essay about their experience, challenges, and what they learned. I think that's a terrific idea. I think reflections are almost always useful for students to get them thinking about like what was actually their process of completing the project, because very often they won't really think about it, especially because they're usually doing it sort of last minute. But also with a project like this, where you're talking about students' health behaviors, I mean, that can be something that's very personal that students can have a lot of, it can be emotionally loaded, right? So the reflection can also give them time to think through and process whatever emotions they have while they're doing a project. But it also give you some insight into seeing like, is there a way that maybe the project expectations need to be shifted slightly so that it's not having a particular emotional impact on students. Like that just gives you more information about how your students are encountering the work you're asking them to do. That's always a good thing, right? That's a great idea. Okay, Ali says, for my fiction class in the spring, I'm planning to have them do a story mapping project with ArcGIS. I don't know what that is. Did I say that right? Right, Ali, probably not. Which will basically have them write a bit of a shorter essay that's supplemented with images, videos, and maps. That sounds really cool. I need to look into whatever ArcGIS is. Has anyone used that before? ARCGIS? Ali, I want you to report back and tell me how that goes, because that sounds amazing. It's a spatial mapping thing. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And this is a great way to make essays feel, I think, more accessible and like relevant to students who are, let's be real, used to interacting with text mostly like in combination with video. Is that what it is?
ArcGIS.
Okay, do you know what it is?
It's like kind of advanced Google Earth.
Okay, interesting.
You can actually, I'm working on a project on ArcGIS. There are a lot of features that you can do, like finding the routes between point A and B. You can find like a lot of data about like the schools in Texas, like churches.
Interesting.
Or, I don't know, to type out highways you have in Texas, like double-sided, like one-sided or something like that. All of stuff, like you can just apply on the layers of the map. And you can just kind of visualize what you want to show people. Just make an example for myself, is just I'm designing some network design, so go from evacuation zones to the shelters. So we can just literally find the evacuation zones on the map by using their zip codes or coordinates or something, as well as the shelters, and show that what routes should evacuate or something like that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great.
It's just compatible with like coding stuff like Python, you can actually code and it's automatically show up in the ArcGIS. There are a lot of stuff to do, like it's really, really advanced and a lot of tools and wonderful options, but I'm guessing you guys also
Interesting.
outside people.
Maybe you should do a workshop for us. I want to learn from you about how to use this.
Actually, ours is like ArcGIS that has a lot of workshops.
Okay, great.
The funded library. So I started from there.
Very cool. Okay, good to know. Thank you for sharing. That's wonderful. Anything else we're thinking about with these summative assessments?
Question. So aren't projects combined with papers or presentations? Because like you have a project.
Depends. Yeah.
Presented to be able to grade it, for example, how you can just compare the project, or like you, like from paper, they assume reports, not an article, scientific article or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think papers can take a lot of different forms. I don't know, I've had projects where I didn't actually have to present them to anybody. The faculty member they just graded them. I also have had projects that I've had to present where like the presentation grade was a pretty sizable chunk of the grade. Or I've done, had a professor who set up like a conference basically. So we each brought our project and then we kind of milled around and like explained what we had done, but it wasn't like a formal presentation. But yeah, I think they can look like several different ways. Yeah. I think you can also like, I don't know, tweak some of these things. Like the way that I write exams now is very different than exams that I've taken in the past, because I have students like actually just like close read passages just over and over and over again in their exams, as opposed to like, you know, just defining terms or matching author with text or something like that. So I think sometimes exams, maybe, I don't know, in the past, I haven't thought as creatively about them as I could have, because it just seems like, well, this is just what an exam is. But actually, if you're looking at your, at what you're trying to get out of the course, right? These like core competencies and skills. Maybe there is a more creative way to think about putting an exam together that's actually going to be more beneficial for those things. Okay, I should say though, especially as grad students, we always want to check in with the department and make sure that what we're assigning actually does meet the department's requirements and our accreditation requirements. So like, for example, even though I don't just do papers for summative assessments, I absolutely still do papers because my classes all have the writing tag, right? So if I wasn't having them do that formal writing, that would be a big no-no. So I think it's great to get creative, and you should have a lot of leeway, I think, to do that with your formative assessments, but with the summative assessments, really make sure that you got the great marks. we have a little bit of time left. Is there anything else that you all would like to talk about? Thank you, Ellie.
Because like, for example, in my major, you have a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
Definitions,
Yeah,
and sometimes, just teachers allow students to have like one page cheat sheets.
yeah,
Like writing, like, because it's like a limited space, you have to write it like, like as small as possible, or, try to organize everything, to have everything in your cheat sheet. Like writing that cheat sheet has helped me a lot of understanding the subject and
Mhm.
classes, honestly, because you're really trying to, write like the most abstracted way.
yeah.
And that's helped a lot, like, using only that one, like after writing, I never use the cheat sheets in the exam, but writing that one
Mhm.
helped a lot more than like preparation for the exam than other classes I have.
I think just the act of like physically writing, right? Yes. I mean, I take notes, I always took notes in classes, I almost never reference them, but just writing them down helped me tremendously. I don't allow cheat sheets on my exams, mainly because they wouldn't really be that useful. They would help students with like definitions. But then I feel like they're really not learning the definition. They're probably just copying it from the definition that I've already given them, their terms list, yeah. But yeah, I think they can definitely be useful. I do like review sessions for my exam, so I'll just make a list of like maybe 10 questions that I know the students should know the answers to if they want to do well on the exam, and then I bring in like Post-its and cue cards and stuff like that, and I have them work together in groups to make their own like exam prep materials. That seems to work well. I've done trivia for exam prep in the past, but I think students are too stressed out. Coming up to the exam, it was not fun. They enjoyed the trivia for other things, not for exam prep. They were like, just give us the answers already. Okay.
Sometimes you have to study to know where to find the things.
Right,
Use an
yeah.
open book,
Right.
right? So I think one thing that I think about is just there's different practices for different disciplines, right? Some professors allow, you can access any materials. In fact, I've been talking to a professor, he's like, you can access anything for the exam. You can access AI, you can access the internet, you can access any materials that you've had, anything. But you have to know how to find those things, otherwise you just don't have the time in class to do the exams. So you have to prep anyway. It just depends on your preferences as the instructor. At SMU, there isn't a rule book of saying what you can and cannot do as the instructor. If you have been put as the instructor of record for the class, usually you have the ability of pick whichever assessment you feel that will let you know if the students are learning the materials or not, up to you. But some departments might have requirements related to accreditation and things you need to be mindful of and make sure to add to your thing. But usually as the instructor of the class, you can do whatever you want. You want to give them the option to do the cheat sheet, give them the option. But if it doesn't make sense, like her class doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense. She doesn't have to do it.
My students probably think it makes sense.
For the students, they could think it'll make sense.
But that's actually an argument to let them have it, even if it's useless, they feel like they've got something
Yeah,
that's useful.
Yeah.
that's true.
And it's kind of, I mean, that's kind of the case too with open book, right? It's like, yeah, you can have your book with you, like, I'm not gonna ask you what things. I'm not gonna ask you your books, but yeah, of course you can have your books, because they feel like they've got.
It's a safety
control.
blanket,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a safety blanket, right? You might know, like,
I might try to want to say that.
I just think that those sometimes with my students, when I have tried to like give them that sort of crutch, then they think I don't need to study because I will just write all of this down here.
That's a lesson,
true.
and then if they don't do well in the exam,
That's
right?
true, but then they email me and they go, oh my God, I really need to pass this class or I'm not gonna be able to start in my sport or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's just like, I don't know. Instead, I try to be really transparent about exactly what the exam's gonna be on. Like this is gonna be your multiple choice section. This is gonna be like, here's, 10 definition or 10 terms. You're gonna have to find 5 of them. You can certainly memorize the definitions of 10 terms, right? And then you're gonna have close read passages and we'll do a bunch of examples so they feel like they're really prepared. I mean, there's always gonna be some anxiety, but I am very transparent about what the exam is gonna look like.
Do you think like multi-part summative assessments are useful, whereas like maybe on one day you do this, on another day you do something else, and like you combine the two, so for students who are stronger on like presentations than written, and some students are stronger in written presentations, you kind of give them.
Yes. Yes. For sure. Oh, but I wouldn't tell them it was like a two-part thing, because I feel like that might stress them out even more. Like, this is your first half of your exam and like your, or whatever. But yeah, definitely, like, I mean, again, that's why I try to do the creative project, because I just know that no matter how much I work on students with writing, like some students just really are not gonna have the skills to write me an A paper, unfortunately. Do I think that means that they should get a horrible grade in my class? No, because there's so many other things that we're learning. No. So yeah, I always want to provide leeway, and I think that's what I like about the formative assessments too, is like, yeah, I'm at, like, whenever we start a new text, I do a 5.3, right? Like, that's 5 points that you just got basically for coming in class, right? So they have quite a bit of like leeway built into how I grade. Because I think students should be able to make mistakes in classes and still get a decent grade, right? There's like, that's just learning, they're gonna make mistakes.
What is the current sort of way that generally at SMU at least grades are sort of how do I put it? Like major grades, minor grades, dissertation, what, yeah.
Like a scale, like for assessment?
Yeah, what is generally sort of across the board? Is there some sort of consensus that it's more like 40%?
No.
There's no consensus.
Not throughout not for the institution.
So, the way I understand best practices is that you want to have more assessments rather than few assessments. Classes that will have like one final exam.
Yeah.
So like
Oh,
90%.
I meant like as far as,
Like how much should participation be
Yeah,
worth, how much should the paper be worth?
No.
daily work
No,
versus
up to the
tests.
instructor.
Yeah.
Up to the instructor, because it varies on, depending on the goals of the class, they are gonna be dictating kind of how you define the assessment strategy. So it's up to the instructor, who technically is the subject matter expert, to define what the objectives for the class are. And once they define what the objectives of the class are, how they will assess student learning to see if they're meeting those objectives. So it should be up to you, but best practices from teaching and learning, what we know is that having a good balance between formative and summative assessments is really important. And having only summative assessments is not, does not match the literature of how learning, or like the practices that you need to have good and long-term retention, don't happen by only having summative assessments. Particularly if you only have exams, like the law school, for instance, one of their practices that they only have a final exam, they just have nothing in between.
That's how they do it in Germany for
Yeah.
every class.
So, but what we know from the research in teaching and learning, and how the brain works for long-term retention, that does not breed good practices for long-term retention, right? Like if there's only one exam at the very end, what do you usually
Yeah,
see?
people need
the week
multiple
before
choices to
studying,
be successful.
at the very end, and cramming in and studying the night before, which is not good for long-term retention. So
So
if we want to have good practices, formative assessments, right, great.
So we're almost out of time. I did want to say, like, if you want more personalized, like, help with assessments, because it's kind of hard to, this workshop is intentionally broad because we never know, like, what department somebody's gonna be coming from, right? But if you want more sort of personalized help, just shoot me an email. I'm very happy to help. You can email me at the CTE email here, or you can find me very easily in Outlook with my name, right? Yeah, I really enjoy doing that stuff. And also, if you wouldn't mind doing a little survey, telling my bosses who are in the room how amazing I am.
We will also send you the recording of the workshop.
Yes.
And with the survey link, but you're here to have it now, so we'll do that in order to get your.
Thank you, everybody online.